Hello, folks. I would like to entitle this little message Common Ground. And might take me a minute to get wound up here. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to get wound up where I can actually get into it. Kind of hard starting off from a cold dead start, you know. Like a car don't want to, when it's cold, it don't take off all at once. You know, you got to let it warm up a little bit. So I might have to warm up a little bit, but a few thoughts hit my mind, and been a while since I said anything, so I thought I'd say something. So anyhow, I think maybe the oil's hitting all the cylinders and valves here now, so let's see if I can preach one. Okay, a while back, what I want to say basically in this, if I could summarize it, because you know the first sentence of the paragraph is supposed to be kind of the summary of what the paragraph's about. That's English class. So anyway, if I could make a summary of this paragraph, this preaching here, it would be that I just want to, given the title, Common Ground, I want to talk about some of the things that I think about in my daily life when it comes to the message. Might get into some of my own personal thoughts, might not, but I'd like to talk about how that I think about things, or how really kind of that I kind of merge with everybody, whatever their ideas are, and then I might get into a little bit of how I think, like I said. Like a good friend of mine, Lucas Taylor, who has been here before, made a great statement one time, and I think I've mentioned it before. He said that we don't want anybody to think, it ain't about trying to get people to think how we think. It's just that we want people to understand how that we think. So I'm not interested in anybody out here thinking the way that I think. I'm not trying to get anybody to think like I think. For the most part, that wouldn't work anyway. If people did think the way I think. Now, some people might. There might be some people who would maybe hear some of the things I say and perhaps begin to think some of the ways that I think. You know, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be a little bit of an influence on everybody around us. That's why we do this. That's, you know, so that can be so, but it's and that would be great. I would, you know, if anybody kind of sees it, like I said before, if anybody sees it the way I see it, then write me by all means. But that's not necessarily what it's about, let's say. But that would be good. It kind of is. I mean, you know, I want to put what I think out there, so that if anybody does think the way I think, well, hey, you know, that would be good. I get some fellowship that way. But it's more so about, I want people to understand how that I think, so that we can all get along a little better, perhaps, or that you all will see at least the way I think, and see how it all kind of meshes together, because that's what Tory Don has been talking about. A lot of his recent talks have been about you know, people coming together and those types of things. So because that's what he would like to see, is for, you know, all of us to come together. And I went to Dayton, Ohio there. What was it? Me and the wife went to Dayton, Ohio there, and hung out with Don and everybody there. Not 2 weeks ago. So, you know, but that doesn't mean that I don't still have differences of opinion. But we can, you know, we found common ground. There's a lot we do agree on. So, you know, so why not? So, and there's also a level to it that we're people. We're not just, I don't know how you would say it. We're not just ideologues, might be the right word for it. We're people. Well, we might be ideologues, to be honest, but we're people. So we've got to keep it at a people level. So Anyway, but so I'm going to try to get into it a little bit here. And this is all a good thing. This is all a good thing. As you know, like Don posted the other day. Okay, I'll tell you this. Don posted the other day about how the planets were lining up and how that they were affecting people. That, you know, like opportunities, or you're going to get out of your comfort zone. It's the planets are lined up, and it makes you get out of your comfort zone and go do something else that you wouldn't normally do. And it's a time for great opportunity. So, and I had no idea. I had just started a new career in. I've been gone doing truck driving training for the past month, and you know, I'm not prone to do anything out of my comfort zone. For years, I've been a very comfort zone oriented person. That I don't like getting out of my comfort zone. So, anyway, I mean, to some degree, that's kind of it's kind of here or there, but it's kind of true. So, especially when it comes to jobs and careers, because I'm very stability oriented. But anyway, so the planets line up and make us do these things. So I had no idea that was what was going on. So it could very well also be this. You know, I looked at it and I was like, well, you know, it's talking about the planets lining up, and I said, well, lo and behold, what have I been doing for the past couple of months when these planets are lining up out here and I don't even know what they're doing? You know, I've been doing exactly what Don said that those planets were going to make us do. I was fulfilling that prophecy, at scripture or whatever, of those planets right there. It was going on. So it could be that the planets, and somebody can maybe figure this out. I don't know where the planet of love, Venus, is at right now or something. But it may be that they might be moving in a way that has brought us together in a sense. And because that's what the whole theme has been about. It's been kind of a coming back together, and to some degree. So maybe the stars are lined up. You know, what can I do about it? I'm just almost kind of feel like I'm just here for the ride, because the planets are lining up and making this go on. Of course, I guess I'm doing it just as much as they are. So anyway, that's highly philosophical there, I guess. So nonetheless, so whatever, I said all that to say this, whatever's going on out here in the atmosphere that is making this the way that this is, and what I'm getting ready to say, and what's been said for a while, then, well, it just is. It just is. So, but anyway, I wanted to talk about how that I function with people out here. And I'm going to try to be pretty honest about it, because at the end of this, you might think I'm a little disingenuous. And that might be true. So anyway, but I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you, you know, what was it, Scarface, he said, in the movie Scarface, he said, I tell the truth even when I lie. So that might be the way it is. So anyhow, let me get into it. I have been gone to truck driving school, and I've learned a few interesting things that whenever I was sitting there learning how to drive a truck and you know, all this and that, some things from the message started to hit my mind, and they'd be teaching me something, you know, and they're just teaching about how to do this or how to do that, and I'd be like, oh yeah, there's a message in that. I can sure see that. So anyway, I wanted to share a few things I noticed. Before I go there, I love watching about military airplanes and ships and anything military. And so I had seen this thing about comparing these two airplanes in the Vietnam War era, and it was I think it's an F-8 Crusader and an A-7 Corsair II. What these planes were was, one, the F-8 Crusader was an air superiority fighter, and the A-7 Corsair II was a ground attack or ground strike aircraft. And I wrote Don Notori And I told him, I said, because he's the Aquarius, he's like the highest air in the air, you know. And I told him, I said, or that's kind of his philosophy, even beyond the fact that he's really an Aquarius. So I said, you know, really, I said, that F8 Crusader, because he's always talking about the number 8, the 8th day, all this. I said, that's the way you look at it. And it's like, one thing I want to say is that, and this has probably been a misconception over the years, is that me and a Tory don't really look at things at odds. We just look at things differently. And the confusion has been through the means of, probably more than anything, the means of you know, uncivilized communication. Really, it's probably been more of it than anything. Because if we could just sit down and have a full conversation, then we'd probably clear up a lot of that. And I'm going to try to do some of that here, and with a lot of other people. And I want to talk about the whole gambit across the board out here, from top to bottom. Anybody, y'all just wait until you hear. Okay. So anyway, that F8 Crusader, that's an air superiority fighter, and it is number 8, talking about the 8th day. Okay. So I told Don, I said, that's you. I said, that's your ideology. I said, you're that air superiority fighter, because air superiority fighter is a plane that tries to get superiority in the upper atmosphere of airplanes, so that you can send in the low flying airplanes and attack the ground. Because you have to have air superiority, or if the other side has air superiority, then you cannot send in very easily the ground attack aircraft, because those planes on top, the fighter planes, are just going to come down and mow them down. Okay, but you got to have both. You got to have air superiority fighters, and you got to have ground strike fighters, or ground strike planes, because an air superiority fighter is built to be a fighter. It's not built to carry bombs and to attack the ground. Neither is a ground attack aircraft built to dogfight with other airplanes, or to gain air superiority in the upper atmosphere, or anywhere in the air. So they have two totally different roles, but they're on the same team. Okay, so, but they do totally different things. They think about it, their concepts of what they are is totally different, but they're both in the air, and they're both on the same team. And so anyway, what I feel that my philosophy is by comparison, is my message philosophy is ground strike. I'm a ground strike airplane. So, because the way that I look at things, I think tends to be more grounded and kind of down on the deck, down on the ground, because that's what those airplanes were. They'd get right down on the ground. They'd be like flying in between mountains, and then they'd drop a bomb right there, you know, just like at treetop level, and then, you know, fly away. So, or a rocket or something at treetop level. You know, they was flying at treetop level. Okay. Now, when you're dogfighting, you're up in the air trying to get air superiority and firing missiles, then you're way up in the air. You're not down on the ground. So, Don's idea of things is, and I'm going to talk about some other people too, but his idea is, like he was saying the other day, he said, you know, Aquarius is the most aloof in the air thinking, and you have to have that, because if we don't have that out here, then that's kind of where ideas come from, in a sense. And then you've got to have the grounded approach to make it come to fruition to some degree. So you got to have, it's like you got idea people, and then you got the doers, and that's kind of the way it really is that it's that idea, the Aquarian Don's mindset of things is kind of the idea in a sense, and then I'm kind of like the down on the ground doer. So, kind of in relative terms. I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't come up with ideas, but anyway, that's just how things work. So, I'm just trying to say that we're not really at odds. We're in the same Air Force here, okay? And so anyway, and and I said the other plane was an A7. So you got an F8 in the air and an A7. Okay. Well, I thought we were done with the 7s. Well, see, that's where I never thought so, because 8 is fine. I got no problem with 8. Technically, the A7 ground attack aircraft that I'm talking about in Vietnam was made and modeled off of the F8, but it was made to perform a ground attack role, if you look it up. So it was modeled after that. So it came from an F8. I got no problem with the F8 message, with Don's 8-day message, okay? But my idea is modeled after that. The skeleton of what I believe is that. But I have wrapped it up in a different package, and I have a different philosophy on things, because I'm made to perform a different role. Okay, so anyway, whenever I was in truck driving school, I noticed, because I never really, the 8th day is great. I believe in the 8th day, the whole thing, but I have always thought of it more in terms of the 8th day is really just Monday, because there's only 7 days in a week, and the weeks always come back over again. So the 8th day is like in Paul's day, because we're always comparing Don Parnell to Paul, right? Okay, so because anyway, his message, or the third coming message, I should say, the kind of the earlier days, we kind of compared him to Paul. So whenever Jesus was around, he was kind of like the 7, and then Paul come around, and that was like the 8th day was like the day of Pentecost or whatever, where they were all in the upper room and blah, 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 and Paul and the whole 9 yards, okay? So anyway, so that was the 8th day, but really that was the first day, because if you think about it, there were 7 church ages, and Paul was the first church age messenger. So actually that was Monday, but that was the 8th day, because Jesus had already come, the Messiah had already come, so it had to be the 8th day, right? Okay, well, then we roll it around to the same thing. William Branham came as the 7th church age messenger, and then, this is the 8th day, which is true. But the way I look at it is more that it's Monday, that it's the first day. But it is the 8th day, but it's the first day. So I think of it in terms more of 7s. But I also acknowledge that it is the 8th. Because I believe that what we're going to do is we're going to go through the age of Aquarius, and we're going to have, whenever you get through at the end of the age of Aquarius, just like all other ages, you're going to be able to break it down in 7 days. So this is the first day to me. What my thought on it is see, we had to understand that this was the 8th day. But once we understand that it's the 8th day, then we're going to have to me, get back to reality. Like I say, my message is like the reality, down on the ground, treetop level. We're going to have to get back to understanding that it's Monday, and we got to go back to work. And the weekends, anyway, we're going to have to get back to work and realize that we're just starting in this, and this is day 1. It's the 8th day, true, but it's day 1. It's back to work, and we got to go back to work and work throughout the age of Aquarius and build up another 7. Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of a bit of a down on a ground approach, right? So as I was in trucking school, I noticed that in trucking in the United States, it's governed by the DOT, the Department of Transportation. And so anyway, how it works is it works, believe it or not, on an 8-day schedule, because how it works is in 8 days, the whole thing works within an 8-day period. And kind of like that old Beatles song, 8 days a week. But anyway, the 8th day, or it works on an 8-day schedule. So if you work, you can work like if you could work 10 hours imagine you could work 10 hours every day. If you worked 8 times 10, then that would be, in an 8-day period, that would be 80 hours, okay? The DOT will not let you work 80 hours in an 8-day period. The max that you can work, the maximum hours that you can work in an 8-day period as a truck driver is 70 hours, okay? So that means roughly what it equates to, you can work like 9.25 hours a day or something like that, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, but that's, I was, whenever they were teaching me about that, I was like, my gosh, that is exactly what I believe. That's exactly what we all believe. Because, see, we've been in this 8-day message, so you've got the 8 days. It's even truck driving, everything that's going on out here, every little insignificant thing that you think, that you could go into the store looking at prices of cereal or something and find the message. You know, the least little thing you could think of. Here I am in truck driving school. What's truck driving school got to do with the message? It all interconnects. So anyway, but it's 8 days, but you can only work 70 hours. That's exactly what our messages have been. Because Don is talking about, he's always talking about the 8th day. And I'm always thinking, yeah, it is the 8th day, but you can only do 7. And I was like, there's our messages right together. 8 days, the DOT says you can work in a period like that without having to do a reset, but you can only go 70 hours. And I was like, well, there's mine, Don's thoughts right there together. Okay? So anyway, another thing is I've talked about Don, so I'm going to talk about some other people. He's not the only person out here in the message, of course, but perhaps the most prominent. I'll tell y'all something else. Another thing I noticed in truck driving school is that okay, I thought this one was funny. They were talking about whenever you're out there driving these trucks, you got GPS in your truck. Okay, you know, you got this satellite fed GPS. Okay. And it's fed from, you know, the stratosphere. It's fed from Aquarius, basically. And, you know, it feeds satellite information into your GPS, and that's how you can navigate and know where to go to take your load of materials and drop them off, you know, because you go pick them up, you take them and drop them off. Okay, so you got to have this GPS unit to tell you when to turn, where to go, how to find your way around. Okay. What they told us was, they said that GPS is great and everybody's using the GPS now, but make sure that you buy an old-fashioned map, an old-fashioned book map that you can read out of a book, because they said sometimes that GPS goes down. So I got to thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, there's a lot in that too. Because see, you know, if the GPS goes down, you don't know where to go, because everybody's relying on GPS and the satellites, and sometimes, you know, technology doesn't always, it has hitches from time to time. It's just the way it works. So for a backup, you better have that physical copy of the book. And to me, I'll tell you what I think that is. In my opinion, that physical copy of that book is the third coming ideology out here. I won't mention their names, but you all know who I'm talking about. You know, they're everywhere. They didn't go into love Davidic ideology. They didn't do GPS and you know, getting their orders from the stratosphere of Aquarius, perhaps, but they know how to find their way around. And when this modern technology does go down, sometimes this modern technology, this dare I say, love Davidic and Aquarius, you know, message, sometimes it's prone to go down. High-tech things everything has issues. So nothing is without fault. So sometimes that message sometimes it goes down. Now don't get me wrong, I done switched over to it. Okay, I'm a love diviner. I'm using GPS. Okay, you know, I'm switched over. okay? But what I do is I keep that physical copy of that book too, just in case. What I do is, I'm a love diviner. I'm running GPS. But I have always believed that these guys that were preaching the third coming message, still to this day, sometimes you need that. Sometimes that's where the truth's at. And when things get so high tech and there's failures in the high tech, you know, we're running GPS and the GPS might work 98% of the time or 90% of the time or whatever. The high tech might work, but every so often it goes down. And then you got to pull out that book to find out where to go because the GPS high tech stuff failed. Okay, it's not, perhaps it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So the third coming, you need that third coming as a backup, just in case. You put those two together, you get your physical book and you throw it behind the seat. Okay, don't throw the third coming out, because sometimes you need them to get where you're going. See, I think the way they think of it is that the third coming, dare I say, the third coming ideology out here is, they kind of remind me of, if I were to compare them to anything, they put me in the mind of an old timer truck driver who don't like these newfangled GPSs and would rather just get in his map book and not have to punch on no computer screen and try to figure out where he's going. He's been doing it for 30 years just fine. He's got he knows where, you know, he's got his map book. He's got everything marked in his map. He knows how to get there. He can get there. Okay. See, they can get there. I think perhaps maybe wrongfully so, if anybody is thinking this, that the third coming can't get there, that would be wrong. The third coming can get there. They can get there. Okay. The low divinity side of it, the GPS side, they can get there, obviously. But the guys with the map book, a guy with a map book that knows what he's doing, he can get there too. And he can get there on a day when the GPS goes down on the low divine. You see what I mean? When it gets too high tech. Okay. So the third coming guys, what I'm saying is they can get there. They can get there too. They might have to stop beside the road and read their map. Might not be as high tech, but they can get there too. So, and I don't throw out that old technology, because sometimes you got to go back to it. Sometimes that's where the answer's at, I have found. Believe it or not. I don't know that a lot of people would agree with me on that, but sometimes that's where I find the answer, is amongst them. So, but like I said, most of the time I'm running GPS, so, you know, make it easy. So anyway, but what I'm saying is I can find a use for all. And there are certain times that I disagree with the love divine, and I agree with the third coming. And there are certain times, you know, like I said, I use a map, but most of the time I use a GPS. So I guess most of the time I would agree with the love divinity side of it. But I always keep that map around. I always keep the third coming ideology around, just in case you need it. So that's what I'm saying. That was the title of my message was, what was it? Common Ground. So I just wanted to talk about how that I have found a lot of common ground in my mind with all the ideas and ideologues and everything else going on around here. I'll even do better than that. Now, before I get into this, I would like to say that, you know, the third coming, like I said, I just made it clear that they can find their way around. Okay, they might be using an old-fashioned map compared to what GPS, but they can find their way around. They're all right. They can find their way around. You know, they got the third coming. They can find their way around. The message people, however, they just don't have any map at all. That's the issue with them. They don't even have a physical map. They just have, it's like no way to get their bearings. You know, it's like, I don't know what you would have used to try to figure how to get around before a physical map. I guess that's what they would have, but it would be, you know, we don't even know what that is. So it's like, that just goes to show how in a mess they are. You know, I guess you would, the only thing I could think of would be like if you were out on a ship and they used to use some sort of like device to try to figure out at what parallel of the earth they were, and it could give them some relative idea of where they were at on the earth. You know, something like that. Maybe that's what they have, but that's pretty, it's, you know, I'm getting vague here. So you know, it would be difficult for them because they ain't even got a map. You know, so they certainly ain't got no GPS. You know, they certainly ain't Love Divine, and they ain't even got a map. They're not Third Coming. Okay, so the message people basically are in outer darkness. If I had to compare it to anything, it's pretty much just outer darkness because they have no clue what they're doing. They have no clue where they're at. They don't know that the Messiah has come. They don't know that the second coming's over. They don't know. They're in outer darkness, basically. Okay, if I had to compare it. So, you know, they have no map. They ain't got a map. But there's three other branches of ideologies out here that I thought of that I can find some common ground with. And sometimes. And I'm gonna say I've done Love Divine, I've done Third Coming. I'm gonna do the message. Okay, here's one to throw you for a loop. At least the way I think of things, and I must think of things in between the in-betweens somehow. I'm in between the in-betweens of everything. This is just the way I think. The way I think of it is I can always find something that I agree with everybody. And I'm going to do the message people. I'm going to tell you all something that I agree with the message people on, oddly enough. Now, they might not look at it the same way that I am, but in a sense, by default, we actually kind of agree on something. And it's this. The message people are looking for the rapture to happen. They're looking for Christ to return. Okay. The way I think of things are, see, the Third Coming, and I think the Love Divine are kind of off more into a different thing. But the Third Coming, their message is basically that it's saying that what I just said has already happened. That's pretty much it. Okay. The way I think of it is that it's happening and it's going to happen again. So, like where I'm in day one, see, it was like the 8th day is to understand, hey, you know, the 7s are over. Okay. And then the 8th day understanding is on the other side, the other spectrum of it, the love divine side is, it's freedom now. Okay, which is all true. Okay, but like I said, where I'm starting, I'm kind of like in the 7th day, 8th day, yes, but I'm kind of like starting Monday. We're gonna continue to go through these phases, and we're going to continue to see the same things happen again, just in a modern form. And I think that was touched upon a while, not so long ago by a Tory. He mentioned something to that effect. I can't remember where it was. I read something. So anyway, but the way I figured is that the marriage supper, you know, the marriage, they're all still waiting on the marriage supper, the rapture, everything. Okay. The way I figured is that we're going to have, as time goes on, we always get a new message to come. That's just how it is. So it's like even in this age of Aquarius, somebody will have more to say about things. That's just how it is. You know, man progresses. Okay. So hypothetically, to me, that will be a marriage supper. We haven't been married to that yet. We haven't been married to what's going to be said 200 years from now yet. We haven't seen that Messiah, that revelation that breaks through our old, perhaps, way of looking at things at that point. So, in a way, I am looking for a Messiah to come. I am looking for a marriage supper to come. I am looking for a rapture to come. I'm looking for that to come every day. I'm looking for me to be driving down the road in my car next week and get a revelation. Well, and that's going to be my rapture. It's going to be my marriage supper. It's going to be my, breaking of the seals and all this and that. And like a good Third Coming guy once said, he said, and I won't mention his name, but let's just say he lives in Kentucky. He said that the guy who the guy who got you to understand the revelation of what had went on, that was the guy who broke the seals to you. So I don't know if you all understand what I'm saying, but that was your church age messenger. That was your seal breaker right there, because that whoever that was who broke it to you. So anyway, what I'm saying is that it could be broke to you at any time, anywhere, anyhow. Some going to truck driving school, driving down the road in your car, listening to radio, anything. So we are always going to William Branham said the rapture was a revelation. Well, if you have, we say we've been raptured. You know, Third Coming says we've been raptured. That's true. That's what I'm saying. These things are all true. You could say every bit of it's true. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's all true. They say, well, we've already been raptured. That's true. We have been. We know as Third Coming and Love Divine people, we've been raptured. Okay, but if a revelation, I get a revelation every day, or dang near it. So if a rapture is a revelation, then I'm waiting on the rapture. If I live tomorrow or by the end of the week, I'm probably at least going to get a revelation by the end of the week. So that means my rapture has yet to come. Now, have I been raptured? Yes, because I got a revelation last week. I got a revelation when we went to trucking school on all this. But I got a rapture out here in the future. Okay? So, and I'm not saying that anybody really disagrees with this. I'm just saying that I'm saying it in a different way. Okay? I don't really hear anybody bring it out this way. But they do bring it out. They do kind of bring this out in their own ways. So I'm just bringing it out my way. Like I said, I'm ground attack Air Force. They're air superiority fighters. We're all doing what we're supposed to do here. Okay? So the rapture, the marriage supper, has already happened and is going to happen. So in a sense, I'm looking for the rapture to happen. So that makes me by default, even though the message people totally don't look at it this way, but they do. But if you put it down to ground level, put it down to treetop level, we do think that me and them agree, because they say the rapture's coming. We're waiting for the rapture, and I say you're right, because whenever I get that revelation next week, I'm looking for that rapture to come. Okay, so I'm looking for the rapture too. So I can agree with the message and say, you know what, you're right. The rapture is coming. I totally agree. Jesus is coming. That revelation I'm going to get next week, if I live to see it, Jesus is coming. The rapture is coming. Amen, brother. Amen. It's coming. Now, of course, like I said, they don't agree with the way I look at it. Okay, but I'm just saying I could find common ground with anybody. I can go in between the in-betweens. Okay? And I ain't saying anybody can't, but this is my sermon. So whenever I was doing the CDL license test to drive a truck the other day, I asked, while I was doing it, I said, should I say it this way or say it that way? And the guy looked at me, the instructor or the tester, he looked at me and said, it's your test, so it's my sermon, so I'm going to preach it. I'm going to preach it however I want. I'm just going to say, well, here's what it is. So, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? Well, hey, this is, it ain't about doing it this way or that way. It's mine. I'm going to do it how I'm going to do it. So anyway, let's see, who else can we do? Because I got to think about it. It's like, I can find common ground with everybody. Okay, here's another one. Here's one that probably would throw you all, that you all wouldn't expect. It's like the message people, who would expect that I could find common ground with the message people, or any of us for that matter? So, or any of us Third Coming, Love Divine, et cetera, moving on up. How can we find common ground with the message people? But I found a way. Okay, so the next group or ideology that I would like to talk about, and I'll try not to mention them by name, is the I guess I'm going to have to just say it, the believe the sign people. Okay, the believe the sign, I guess it's called Branham apologetics. They question the idea of whether William Branham was really a prophet. Okay, well, I got to thinking about that, and actually I agree. And I've had conversations with some of these people over the years, with all the people I've mentioned so far, and You might find me a little disingenuous, but I've agreed with all of them. And it's kind of maybe a little hard to do because, their ideas are from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I guess some might find me a little disingenuous that I could agree with so far a difference from one end of the spectrum to the other on the thought process out here. But that's just the way it is. If I'm disingenuous, I'm disingenuous. So I think it goes back to, I don't know, I feel like I have Libra mentality. And it's kind of like Libras can be thought of as disingenuous because they, now I'm not a Libra, but I've read about Libras. They can be thought of as disingenuous because they try to make everybody happy. They try to keep peace, and it's the Venus thing. Try to keep peace, and they try to, I guess, find a common use in everything, even if from one end of the spectrum to the other. That's what Libra's about. So but you could look at them as a bit disingenuous because they can kind of agree with everybody. So it's one of them things. So anyway, that's just the way they are. So anyway, so the believe the sign people. Okay, so I was thinking about, they question the fact whether William Branham's actually a prophet. Okay, now this one's going to get fun, and I got one more to do after this. So I'll just start by saying this. A while back, a Tory had posted something about the idea that there are no more prophets. Okay. It's the age of Aquarius, there are no more prophets. Okay. Well, he's really right. There are no more because it's the age of Aquarius. You can't have a prophet in the age of Aquarius. There's no room for, according to Aquarian ideology, as far as I can tell, there's no room for an office of such a position of prophet. It really just doesn't exist. Okay. However, and I told this to a good friend of mine, I said, here's the deal. I said, that's true. However, consider this, and I'm going to bring it down to ground level because that's kind of the airy approach to it, which is true. But I'm going to bring it down to ground level. Look, what I like doing is I like putting this stuff into real action. I want to bring it down to the ground, and I want to ground it, and I want to say, let's just take away just for a second the good ideas, and let's think about what's really going on here at ground level. Okay, riddle me this, Batman. Think about it. This is what's really happening here. Okay, what we've really got is we've got a guy who is saying that there are no more prophets, and he's right, okay? And this guy himself is a bona fide prophet, okay? Really. Now think about it. We talk about all the stuff that goes on. I'm talking about a Tory, okay? Now that's just the way I feel about it. He's a bona fide prophet. That's just the way I feel about it, and that's what I've always thought, okay? And a lot of you all will all agree with me. Even the love diviners, even the people that would say that, would agree with a Tory that he's saying that there are no more prophets, and he's right. But also they think he's a prophet. We hear the stories of all the stuff that goes on in his life, and we're like, and I hear all this stuff, and I'm like, people have told me stories about some of the stuff that, the strange occurrences that have happened in his life, and I'm like, this guy's obviously a prophet. There's just no two ways about it. So what we have here is we have a prophet telling us that no more prophets exist here. Okay? Think of the irony in that. Okay? That's really what it is. It's a prophet, a bona fide prophet, telling us that we have no more prophets. A bona fide prophet with a message saying that there are no more prophets. Okay? See, how it works is, see how ironic that is? How it works is this, and I hope I can explain this the way I feel about it. Technically, we haven't had any prophets for 2,000 years, okay? Because the 7 church age messengers were not prophets. They were church age messengers. The age of the prophets was the age of Aries, which was the 2,000 years from like Moses on up to Jesus. Okay, that's when we had prophets. Okay, so that was the age of the prophets, the Levitical priesthood, the prophets, and blah blah blah. Okay, the old law. Okay, then it went into the 7 church age messengers, and then everybody, of course, said, William Branham's a prophet. Okay, which was true, but technically, he was a church age messenger. He wasn't a prophet. I mean, if you think about it. So actually, I kind of agree with the believe the sign people that, by default, not the way they look at it, obviously. That's technically true. William Branham was he was a church age messenger. He wasn't a prophet, although he was a prophet. He was absolutely a prophet. All these guys have absolutely been prophets. Depends on how you look at it. The prophets were prophets, obviously. There's no problem with that one. The church age messengers were all prophets, because it's that concept. That concept is undying. It doesn't matter what you rename it. It's the concept is undying. And then we get up here into the age of Aquarius, solidly into the age of Aquarius, after the 7 church ages, and we get a prophet here who is telling us that there are no more prophets. Okay, so, but he's a prophet, so nobody's going to convince me otherwise. It's like whenever I was over in Dayton, and they were talking about all the things that William Branham had done, that they had seen, had been in William Branham's church, physically seen, all them people healed, William Branham, people coming back from the dead, you name it. And somebody said, anyway, somebody said, they said, nobody is going to tell me that William Branham was not a prophet. Okay, because they were there and seen it. Okay, I wasn't there and seen it. But I'm just going to tell you this. Nobody's going to tell me that Toriello Yonza is not a prophet. Even if he tells me his message himself, even if his message himself is to tell me that there are no more prophets. And I agree with that. Nobody's going to tell me he's not a prophet. You see how this works? I can find some common ground with everybody. Look, these believe the sign people, they say, William Branham's not a prophet. That's true. Like I said, that's technically true. Technically true. But he was a prophet. Okay, so how you want to run that? So anyway, and another thing is, the way that the message people made him out to be a prophet, I would also disagree with that in some regard too. Now, the way they look at it, I think, because they do a terrible injustice to what a prophet is. So if you're looking at the way they look at it in terms of a prophet and their dogmatic, cult-like way of looking at it, then I agree even more with the believe the sign people in some regard that the way they're looking at it and making him to be a prophet is certainly not the right way to look at it. So I can agree with that. But we have known as Third Coming people, we have known that there was a right way to rightly divide the word or whatever, to rightly divide what happened there and to understand how it really is. But it's funny how that all these people out here with all these different ideas, you can really kind of take something from all of them, because it's like that. What's the old saying about there's always something to conspiracy, or there's always something to legend. And if anybody comes up with a movement like this, or one of these movements, there's always a little something truth to it. I mean, you can always find a little truth to it, because people won't go for something that's absolutely false. You got to have a little bit of truth to it. It's like we always say about what they say about the serpent: "You shall not surely die." Well, whatever. There's once you eat that fruit, you'll be as gods. God knows you'll be as gods, and you'll be able to see blah blah blah. Well, there's a little bit of truth in there. So you got to throw in a little bit of truth. It might be 75% wrong, but hey, there's 25% in there. You can always dig it out. So anyway, I can always find some agreement with people. The next thing is that the last one. I'd like to say this. I've had fun thus far telling all this because this gets really into my deep thoughts and how I think about things. And I hope I haven't bored anybody to tears just yet. But the next one I would like to talk about gets more back into the third coming ranks and such. And I hope it's all right to mention them. I will mention them by church name, and I think you all will probably be able to figure out who I'm talking about because I don't want to mention them by name. Unless I were pretty... Anyway. Let's just say, this next one, let's just say that there is a group in the Philippines that goes by the name of, or their church name is the Queen of Sheba. Okay, and I have this all figured out in geographical terms, spiritual geographic terms. The way I figure it is, like I had talked about ancient Israel, in the north was the Israelites who split from Judah. Judah is in the south, okay, that represents an ideology, and that was the ideology of the third coming because they were guarding the temple, guarding the old third coming message. And then when the North split off, that was the Love Divinic ideology splitting off from the third coming. Okay. And so anyway, without going too deep into it, but if you think of it in terms of geographics, the southern, to my understanding, the southernmost point geographically in the old kingdom of Israel and Judah Judah was in the south. The most southern point that you could go to, I believe, was the city of Beersheba. Okay, so what I figure is this, is that if you think about it, spiritually speaking, geographically speaking, then you have got ideologies from top to bottom, okay? You've got the top ideology, the northern ideology, and the southern ideology, the very north and the very south, should be diametrically opposed ideologically, if you think about it. Okay, so what that would mean is that the north, the kind of the love divine ideology, and would be diametrically opposed to the very south of Judah in terms of spirituality out here, in terms of this message. So I do not know. Honestly, of all the people I've talked to and run into out here, I'll just be straight with you, and I don't think they would mind me saying it. The most diametrically opposed, but still within the confines of the third coming ideology in general, the most diametrically opposed, but still yet third coming ideology to the Love Divinic ideology would be the message of the Queen of Sheba that in the Philippines, okay? Like I said, I'm not going to name any names, but that is the most diametrically, but still third coming ideology, not message, because they don't like the message either. They know how, well, dare I say, well, I'm not going to say. They know how rather ridiculous the message ideologies are, okay? So, but yet they are very diametrically opposed to love divinism. Well, geographically, that is so. Because it occurred to me one day, I was like, the Queen of Sheba. And I was like, Beersheba. Okay? It's the city. It's the most southern city in Judah. So it's so diametrically opposed to the Love Divinic idea that it's not even funny. And it is. Okay? But, given the fact, see, I can find common ground anywhere. Like I said, I can go in between the in-betweens. I find some common ground there. And I'm not saying, whenever I say I find some common ground, I'm not saying that maybe if you think of it the way I'm thinking, maybe a lot of other people out here actually would kind of agree. Okay, but they never really perhaps thought of it this way. So I'm not saying that the Love Divine people would disagree with me, even though I'm getting ready to make some agreement with the most diametrically opposed to them. But here's what I find. the idea, and I know this is opening a can of worms, probably, but the idea that for a long time that the Queen of Sheba message out here has been preaching has been the idea that the Philippines itself is Israel. Okay, so, and to what degree, perhaps, I think their idea is along the lines of perhaps even genetically Israel. Okay, all right. Here's what I think. I'll just tell you all what I think. I had known about the idea that the Philippines was the land of Ophir for a while. I knew about that before they ever started talking about it, and to my remembrance. And the land of Ophir was where Solomon went to get his gold. So let's say, because you see, the story, as far as I know, was that when the Spanish first discovered the Philippines, they thought that they had found the land of Ophir. Okay, well, let's say that's true. Okay, now it may very well be true. I don't know. I don't know. It may not. Okay, but anyway, let's say that it is. Okay, if in fact it is, then that would mean that there would be some probably genetic left code there. Okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt that it is true. Well, that would mean that genetically, that would very well mean that the people of the Philippines might in fact be of old Jewish ancestry to some degree, which would kind of perhaps make a very good case for them being all falling into the case of them being the Jews, now the people who could receive the message, etc., because genetically they've even got it. Okay, all right. Okay, now that's one way of looking at it. Here's, however, what I think, though. That's a hypothetical, in my opinion, because, and here's the way I think of it. Whenever Solomon, see, all the kings of the earth came to Solomon, as I think was the way it was stated. What I find is that generally in every society, you can, or every ethnic group, you can make a case that they were perhaps, what would you say, that they were old Jewish genetically. Like, for example, the Cherokee Indians in the United States believed that they were genetically Jewish. And they did some genetic tests on them and found out that that seems to be true as far as I understand. Okay, you've got the stories of the supposedly whenever Judah finally fell there at one point, or Israel, that the prophet Jeremiah got the one of the last remaining daughters of the lineage of David and took her to Ireland and eventually ended up in, I think, Scotland. And that's where this stone of scone comes from that the Scottish kings used to swear in on, and is now supposedly the stone of scone is in London, England, and that's where they all swear in on, as far as I understand. Okay, and that was supposed to be what, Jacob's pillar or something from the Old Testament. I don't know, but I can tell you this. There was another story. Anyway, I can tell you this. Oh, and even I think the Japanese, that somebody had done like studies of like their rituals, their spiritual rituals. Of course, the Japanese don't practice Judaism; it's like Shinto or something. But they said that even they have their rituals are kind of like Jewish rituals. And somebody said, well, maybe there's some connection here. Okay, so I don't know. I just read all this stuff. So I'm just saying these are all hypotheticals. But the way I figure it is that probably me being of English descent myself, English and Scottish, it's a real possibility that I could probably make just as much claim as perhaps some of the other ones could claim to have real genetic Jewish roots. Okay, so my opinion on it is there's a lot of them other than the Philippines. The Philippines has got a very good claim to it, in my opinion, okay, genetically. But there's a lot of other ones of us out here that also have a very good claim to it too, potentially, okay, all of us. So I'm saying, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's all probably pretty much tit for tat. It's all pretty much broad as it is long on that. But what I do agree with very much is that in terms, here again, I don't agree perhaps the way they agree, but maybe a little bit more in this situation. But I agree in a different kind of a way. I have thought that for a long time, because I've been to the Philippines 3 times, and I talk to people from there, and I know that they're very much into the message from one end of the spectrum to the other. The third coming message. In my opinion, if nothing else, if hypothetically that it isn't the land of Ophir, okay, which I think is a very good chance that it is, but hypothetically, even if it weren't, the Philippines is absolutely spiritually Israel, because if you could go anywhere else and find probably more of a concentration of people who believe the third coming message, which we know to be Israel, which we know to be the circumcision today, okay, like I said, the circumcision is, if you're circumcised, is that you believe that Christ is in you. Okay, that is the circumcision. Because David said, whenever he went out to fight Goliath, I'm getting a little off point, but I'll bring it back to point. He said, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the armies of the living God?" Well, what was the uncircumcision? To defy the armies of the living God. What is the armies of the living God? It's the idea, the understanding that God lives in you. That's what it was. Okay, so if you're uncircumcised, then that means that you don't believe that God is in you, essentially, which is the core of the third coming and Ludwinic ideologies. Okay, so what I'm saying is that where can you find more of a concentration? Probably anywhere. And I realize maybe Africa, I understand that. But the Philippines certainly makes a very high claim to, if nothing else, not perhaps, genetically is one thing, but at least spiritually, makes a very high claim that you could say that it is a geographical hotbed for being called spiritual Israel. Spiritual Israel. Because there are so many that believe there, that believe in the circumcision, believe that the living God, that they are the living God, that don't believe message uncircumcised Philistine ideology. Okay, because that's what they are. The message is, anyway, the people in the Philippines that are around this message, there's so many of them geographically that make a claim to being the spiritual Israel through their circumcision of understanding. Okay, so even if it hypothetically weren't, and I'm not saying it's not, even if it hypothetically weren't genetic Israel, then it very well, in my opinion, heartily is a hotbed, or perhaps the most claim to being spiritual Israel geographically. That's my opinion on it. So in a sense, I totally agree with the Queen of Sheba message out here in that sense. And I'm not saying that anybody, after I brought it out this way, I think that probably people in the Love Divine would probably agree with that. Okay. I wanted to talk about the Philistines just a minute. The Philistines, see what the Philistines were they were usurpers over the Israelites in the land. The land belonged to the Israelites, but they usurped authority over them, and they ruled and controlled them. Well, that's what these message pastors have been doing for 40, 50 years. They're usurping authority over the armies of the living God because they were controlling that ideology. They didn't want any of that ideology to get out. So that's what they are. They're usurpers. These Philistines. There's just a bunch of giants out here. It's a bunch of giants and a bunch of people that giants in the message that are holding down the real armies of the living God. And I'm saying, when it comes to these Philistines, these message Philistines, who are you? Who are you to defy the armies of the living God? You uncircumcised Philistines. Because they're uncircumcised in the mind, and they're trying to keep everybody else down. They're trying to keep, everybody, all the Israelites are hunkered down. And it was like, here comes Goliath, and he's like, bring me out somebody to fight with. Well, here, I'll tell you what, I can't. Here I am. I got I got some stones. Just give me my sling and my stones, and I'll be glad to take this message of the circumcision, because nobody is going to tell me that nobody to me is going to defy the armies of the living God. Nobody is going to defy this idea that God lives in us, that we are the Messiah. Nobody is going to defy that to me. And I will be happy to meet you on the field with a sling and with a rock anytime, because and I will be glad to sink that rock into your mind, and that will be the end of Goliath. That will be the end of these Philistines. That would be the end of this idea, this uncircumcised idea, is to sink a rock up into their mind, a rock, a stone, an understanding, to sink that up into their mind, to sink that into the temple of their mind, and Goliath will be down, and I will cut his head off, and the fowls of the air or whatever will eat it, and I will hold it up, and that's the way it's going to be. Okay, so I don't want, that's just what it is. I will sling one stone, one understanding, one smooth stone, one understanding, slung from the hand of the armies of the living God into the temple, into the understanding of the Philistines, and take them out. That's how this works. Like Jonathan, listen to me. Jonathan and his armor bearer, whenever they went up to take on the Philistines, they said, Jonathan said, numbers don't matter. There might have been 100 Philistines up there. He said, numbers don't matter. He said, man, if the Lord's going to deliver us, we're going to go up. And so anyway, Jonathan and his armor bearer went up there and took on 100 Philistines or whatever, and slew them all. See, it's just, you can put one guy with the understanding of this message, this third coming message. You send one guy and an armor bearer into a camp of 100 of these message people, and we'll clean the whole lot out. They can't fight this. It's the army of the living God. That God is, God is inside. It's who you are. So you can't. Their God it can't fight it. Like I said, the Philistines worship the god Dagon. And what is Dagon? It's a day gone by, is what it is. It's the message of this 80 years ago of that they misunderstood William Branham even then, and of course that was all we had at the time. But it's the message of a day gone by. Okay, Dagon. They worship Dagon. These Philistine message guys worship Dagon. Okay, so anyway, that's all I need to say about that. I can take on 200 foreskins of these Philistines is no problem. It's no problem to take them to go into their camp and take them out, because you've got the understanding. You could take out 200 of them. You could get them. What can they do? So anyway, the numbers don't matter. Nothing matters. That's what Jonathan was saying. That's what, when David went in there, he took them out. Okay, so the stone has been slung. Okay, so anyway, but I want to get back on point here. I just had to say that. I wanted to get by. What I wanted to say was that I have made a connection and with everybody out here, and in some form or another. And what I want to say is that once you've heard the connections that I have made, then maybe it will make you all to think, because this is what Tori's been writing about that he wanted to do, and I want to do it too. He wanted to bring people together, and that's what I want to do. I want to, perhaps more in an ideological way, I want to get people to understand, if you can think, see, the way I thought, I never really had an ideological difference. Like I said, mostly our differences was that I couldn't explain this. It just wasn't time to explain how that I felt, and we had some misunderstandings based on the current time of things. It just wasn't time for it, and You know, you can't explain these things. Sometimes you just can't explain them very easily over trying to talk on Facebook or whatever, and it just gets misconstrued and the whole thing. And but what I want to do is I want to just consider, if everybody from top to bottom would consider Don's idea of just coming together, because his idea is just, let's try to come together. And maybe you disagree with Don very, very much, which I have disagreed in some regards myself. But if you understand how I think, then really I haven't. So I wanted to clarify that. But what I really wanted to say is that I have found a way personally to find some agreement with basically some level, what did I call it? What's the name of this message?
Common ground?
What was it?
Common ground.
Common ground. Yeah, thanks, Wivey. I have found some common ground. I've found a way to find some common ground, to go in between the in-betweens and find some common ground in every situation. Even if I didn't exactly agree with it in a certain way, I'd find a way to agree with it. And what I'm saying is that we can love each other with brotherly love, and I think that's what Atori is trying to get at. But wouldn't it be better also if we could love each other in, even ideologically, that we don't have to be so far apart, that we don't have to be that way. We can even find an ideological common ground, and we can have an ideological brotherly love, because it's like this. Like I said, we're all circumcised. We're all Israelites. We've got differences of ideas. The Israelites fought amongst themselves. You know, it's like Scottish tribes. You know, they're all Scots, but they all fight amongst themselves. They fight amongst themselves more than they fight the enemy that's trying to invade their whole country. You know, that's the way the Scots were. So that's I was talking about the Scots earlier, so I bring up the Scots. So it's the same thing with us. Have we not fought? We're a bunch of tribesmen out here almost. Have we not fought amongst ourselves? We've almost fought amongst ourselves more than we fought against the message. So perhaps it's time that maybe we should consider to try to find some ideological ground. Atori's saying brotherly love. I'm saying some ideological common ground. And that's that's a different type of brotherly love in a way. It's ideological brotherly love. And so perhaps it's possible. And so here's another thing. I kind of leave on this, is that what I have said for the longest time is that it used to be that religion and science were at odds with each other. You know, because if you were religious, then you couldn't have science. It was like the devil. So what I have learned is that in understanding things like history and science, that you can know these things, you can know science, and science will actually oftentimes prove religion to be correct in some form. Okay, maybe not the way that the religious people believed it to be, but science can kind of lend accreditation to sometimes religious ideas. So what I'm saying is this, is why can't we do the same thing? And why can't we perhaps have the ideological side of it, which seemed to be the thing that was the fighting? Why can't, and then the brotherly love side of it, which was kind of like the, I don't know, perhaps religious side. Why can't we bring these two together? Why can't we let them dovetail together and work for each other rather than against each other? Let's bring ideology and let's merge that with brotherly love, and let's try it. And let's see if we can't do the same thing and bring religion and science together to some degree. Because like I said, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I understand a lot of people have the idea that science does not go, science has no part in religion. But it's like this. If there are certain things of science and history that do prove religion to be true, so they don't have to go against each other. And I understand in a way that's kind of still true, that science is the enemy of religion. I understand that, and there's a truth to that. But even in this day, there's a modern version of science is the enemy of religion. That's true. But this age is also about being able to bring things together. So let's just perhaps see if we can't try to bring things together. That's what I've been doing for years. I've always thought Third Coming, Love Divine, always in my mind, and the people I talk to, I always would agree or disagree, agree as much or disagree as much one with the other. So anyway, that's the way it worked out for me, but there was always some commonplace I could always find with every one of them. And so that's just my thought on it. So anyway, I guess I better cut it off here. That's about all I had to say. I hope you all enjoyed. And what could I say? Peace, shalom, peace. Peace, shalom. Whatever you want to,